Hello and welcome to the PCOS Nutritionist Podcast. If we haven't met yet, then my name is Claire. I'm a registered nutritionist and I also hold a qualification in exercise science. That's my other degree, natural fertility education and functional medicine. And I have PCOS too, so I know how damn frustrating these symptoms can be. But I also know after 10 years or more of trial and error, how good it can be on the other side when most of those symptoms are in remission and I'm no longer without a period for 3 years, right? Like I have ovulated now every month for the last 5 years. I also know what it's like to not have to deal with acne or unexplained weight gain. For the first time in my life, being able to maintain my weight without really thinking about it. And for you, those symptoms might be facial body hair growth or hair loss. Fatigue was another one that I struggled with. And so many other things that people don't talk about, like blood sugar crashes and severe sugar cravings. Or maybe it's feeling like you need to sleep forever to ever feel refreshed. So my philosophy is that PCOS is a condition that is a combination of your genetics and environment not playing nicely together. Now, PCOS is a genetically driven condition, right? We have the genes that predispose us to PCOS, but your genes don't determine your future or don't determine or aren't guaranteed to determine your future. It's really a matter of the environment has to turn those genes on to make them present. So equally though, we can turn those genes off and not get those symptoms. So what I want to find out is what's affecting your, or what's driving your PCOS. So what systems in your body are not functioning optimally that are causing your body to have these symptoms. And there are a few things that the research shows can really drive this. The main one is blood sugar and our hormone insulin, which controls our blood sugar. The next most common is our stress hormones. The third most common is a thyroid condition and then chronic inflammation, or it can be some other causes as well, but those are really the main things. So for me, and when I work with my patients, the most important thing is to find out what's driving that for you, because then we can then have very specific lifestyle changes that are actually going to work. We're no longer just jumping from diet to diet, hoping that something will work, right? We know what the problem is and we can then put together a solution, right? It's like going to your mechanic and, if you went to your mechanic and said, hey, my car's not starting, if they said to you, okay, well, we'll order a different motor. And you're like, sorry, excuse me? Like, have you even tried turning it on? Have you looked at it? Have you figured out what could be causing it? And they're like, no, we'll just buy a new motor and see if that works. And you're like, hold on, that's a really expensive way to go about fixing my car. You wouldn't accept that, right? You'd go, right, well, figure out what's going wrong. And that's the same thing as we need to do with our PCOS. We need to figure out first what's going wrong before we can put the right plan in place. Otherwise, we're just using a scattergun approach and hoping that something works. And I think this is something that we don't understand or haven't really thought about, is that changing our lifestyle, like slightly tweaking what we eat or maybe how we move or the vitamins and minerals in our body or how much we sleep can have a dramatic impact on the way that our hormones work. But if we don't know what to focus on, then we're so scattered and we're just trying to do everything, which is just either not achievable or not sustainable. So this is the way that I work with you in helping you understand what are the most important things you should be doing. And that really is only 4 or 5 things. It's not changing your entire lifestyle and diet and getting you to cut out every possible food group under the sun or setting up with unrealistic training expectations where you have to exercise 4 hours a day. You don't have to do that and to see success and see results. And actually people that do tend to do those things like cutting out massive food groups or training 4 hours a day often find that their symptoms get worse because they're so tired and so grumpy that they can't stick with any changes. So I help you through my program, the PCOS Protocol, and this is something it's not just a PDF we send you. This is a program that I work with you on. So I'm there every week answering questions from you, doing live calls with you, trying to personalize and change things that you have the maximum effect, while we understand what's driving this for you and what changes you need to make. So that's a bit about me and a bit about us. And let's get into the topic for today, though, because that is what you are here for. We're back with part 2 of the Q&A around leading an 80-20 lifestyle. And if you missed part 1 the other week, then you might find that helpful to go back and listen to. But this is a question box that we put up on our Instagram stories, because I always talk about how my approach is 80-20. I don't expect someone to never eat a Snickers bar again if that's their favourite thing, even though they might be insulin resistant, because they can actually get away with it, and it's going to make them stick to the changes most of the time for all their life if I can allow them to have some flexibility in there. Whereas if I said, no, you are never going to eat that again in your life, or you're never going to eat a single carbohydrate again in your life, then the likelihood of you being able to stick to that is very, very slim. I think there's probably a handful of people in the world that can stick to that kind of like regimented, small or restriction in their life. Yeah. And I haven't come across one of them yet. And I mean, even myself, like I know that I have a huge amount of self-discipline. I mean, you can't be an elite athlete and get out there and train, go running in the pouring rain and snow, and without having a large amount of self-discipline. And I know that even I can't, be 100% perfect in my life, and I wouldn't want to, because it's no fun. Like I actually want to enjoy my life, and as I said in that last podcast, get away with as much as I can. So this is what 80-20 means, and as I said in the last podcast, there is no fixed term of what that means. So people say to me, well, does that mean I can have 3 meals off each week, or can I, and my answer is that while that can be helpful for some people, it can be really restrictive for other people. So it's about finding what works for you and figuring out what that balance is. And this is where we wanted to go into some really specific questions that you asked us about, especially the perfectionism side of it.
I think that's a big thing for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I know we had a question from Bailey, right?
Yeah.
Our lovely Bailey.
And she asked, or she said that she struggles to give herself permission to be only 80%. So, struggling with not just going all gung-ho 100% of the time. Yeah. And I think this is a really hard one, especially because I know Bailey very well, but and I know that she is, she's a super driven woman, and especially those of us or people that would identify themselves as a type A personality, that you're driven, you want to succeed, and you've always been encouraged to do everything to your best ability and as well as you possibly can. So, but I think that there's a difference between doing something to your best ability than doing it to the point where you just don't enjoy your life. There's no pleasure and there's no joy, or there is so much restriction that you can't maintain that for a long period of time. And that's where I think that if you like are really enjoying like eating nothing but carrots and boiled chicken, then by all means, eat that. I'm not saying that you have to go and eat a burger, but just because you can, and like if that's not what you want to feel like, then don't eat it. But for most people, that's not the case, right? They want to, and that's why we've heard from you guys that you want the flexibility in your lifestyle. You want to be able to go out with friends and family and not really have to worry too much about your eating. And that's where I want you to get to as well. So I guess the thing for you, Bailey, as well, is that realizing that I know that's hard, because when you don't know what is affecting your body, especially when it comes to fertility, when there's so many unknowns, there's that little voice inside your head that goes, well, maybe if you just stuck with everything 100%, things might sort themselves out. And I would say that in my experience, that's very rarely the case that someone would need to be 100%. And so I think that is the, in terms of your question about how do you give yourself permission to be 80%, well, it's that realizing that you don't have to be 100% to achieve the outcome that you want, and so therefore there is no harm in giving yourself permission to be 80%, but you are still going to need to shut that voice up in your head. And as we talked about in the last podcast, there's
no easy way to do that, really.
It's not. There really isn't. It's a learning exercise, and it is for some people have it far worse than others, and especially if you've had a history of anxiety or depression, is that little voice is often very, very, very loud for those of you that have had that, and it can take a long time to learn how to turn that off. Mindfulness meditation can be really helpful in doing that, and in learning what that little voice is and how it's not the source of truth, and learning to be able to ignore that. So I'd say that's a more of a long term, but it can be, once you figure that out, it can be so helpful for so many other parts of your life as well that you might also find yourself overthinking in, whether that be work or social situations or anything else.
Yeah. And then conversely with that, Sarah said, how do you deal with kind of the shame and guilt when you are enjoying that 20% that's not like on plan? Because I think it's really hard when you're like, cool, I'm allowing myself this 20% to just enjoy. How do you not feel like, I've gone and ruined it all, and then blow out and it becomes 80%?
Yeah, I think that's another really good question.
Yeah.
Different strokes work for different folks. Some people work really well with when they plan their meals out at the start of the week, to plan in which meals they're going to have that are not what they would normally eat. And I really hate the term cheat meals. Like because I think that invokes the feeling of, I'm not supposed to have this, as opposed to another term like, I don't know. I actually don't know I need to come up with some term, because I want to invoke the feeling for you that this isn't something that
you should have to cheat on.
Yeah. Yeah. And also that this isn't, when it's planned and it's built in, it's not actually cheating. You're not cheating on anyone. Like, this is something that's allowed. It's not forbidden. And I think that's what cheat kind of invokes, is this forbidden fruit. So I don't know, maybe treat, like that's maybe how I would phrase it, because then it becomes that, well, it's not something that I would eat every day. This is my treat, but that's part of what a treat is something that we enjoy, and that is not an everyday thing, but it is something that's also allowed, and it's not so forbidden. Mm-hmm. So I'd say we'll call it from here on a treating, like, or treat meal or something like that. So for some people, they work really well when they build that in at the start of the week. So they say, right, here's my week ahead. I'm going to be not going to be doing anything Monday to Thursday, so I'm going to cook for myself and have my foods that I know work well for me. And then Friday night, I'm going to go out with friends, and I want to go for dinner with them and not be worried about what I'm eating. So that's going to be one of my treat meals. And then I want to go out for brunch on Sunday with some friends, and again, not be worried about what I'm eating. So that's going to be my other treat meal, right? Mm-hmm. So it kind of, building those in, and therefore you can do that without any feelings of guilt or shame, because it is part and parcel of what you've planned for the week, and you can really enjoy it. Other people, what really helps them is having those treat meals as their dinner. So they find when they're first getting over this shame and guilt associated with eating something that they know is less optimal for them, or is more of a treat, then if they know that if they do it earlier in the day, then they're more likely to derail the whole day. Yeah. And I think this is a learned behaviour, and it can be unlearned, so it doesn't necessarily have to be for everybody. But if you have it as like the dinner, then you've already had the rest of the day that's been really good. And so this is, the treat dinner, and then you have that reset, a good sleep, where you can realise that actually you haven't ruined anything. It was all part of what you planned into your week, and therefore you can just go about the next day back to normal. So I think you've got to work out really where your psychological barriers are around this, and if that is the case for you, if you listen to this and go, yes, that's absolutely me, I know that if I go out and I have pancakes for breakfast with lots of syrup, then I'm more likely as well to, and this can be the case especially if your blood sugar is all over the show, is that could spike your blood sugar and make it crash down, meaning that you're more likely to crave other sugary foods later in the day. So I'd say that definitely for me, even though now I've had my blood sugar well under control for many years, I still find that if I have a sugary meal right at the start of the day, I'm more likely to have a blood sugar crash and feel get the hangry attacks and then feel cravings. And it's not that I even then want the sugary food, but I have to have it to bring my blood sugar back up. So if that's you and your blood sugar is still a little bit unstable, then maybe building in more evening based treat meals would be helpful for you, or making them more that they're not super sugary, but more, I don't know, you have a burger that you wouldn't normally have, or something else that's still good, some good fats and vegetables and stuff like that to blunt that insulin response, so you're not going to feel so terrible afterwards.
Definitely. Erin says that she really struggles with cravings and blood sugar, so perfect tie in there. But she doesn't want to feel like she has to track everything, because she can't live that way, and I don't expect her to.
No,
I don't think anyone should have to. So
No.
what do you suggest Erin does in that situation?
So I think just off the bat, I don't. There's very few patients that I would work with that I would get them to track what they're eating. Right, very few.
Especially right off the bat.
No, definitely not. And certainly not in the PCOS protocols. In the PCOS protocol, you don't track anything. What I would do is I would say that the reason you're getting those blood sugar crashes, Erin, is just what I mentioned before, that it's likely that your blood sugar and insulin aren't working optimally. And so we need to help you by stabilizing your blood sugar first, so that you're then not getting these crashes. And this is what I struggled with for so many years. Like, even after I'd been diagnosed as insulin resistant, I knew that sugar wasn't the best thing for me, but I just couldn't. Like, I literally would get to 3 p.m. and I would be craving sugar with such intensity that I couldn't ignore it. Like, I tried everything. I tried rearranging my day so that I would have meetings in the afternoon, so I wasn't stuck at my desk and getting bored, and therefore getting, and able to then go to the vending machine. I tried to make it as hard as possible, but yet, like, that didn't necessarily work. And so I know what it's like, and I would say the fix is you have to stop the craving from happening. And it is really easy, right? It's just about working with someone who knows what they're doing, can help you with that. This is what we do in the PCOS protocol with all women that have this symptom. And we know from our data that it works 95% of the time. And then we don't have to try and prize you away from the sugar, because you're just not feeling like it. You don't need it anymore. And you're still going to potentially feel like sugar, at some point. And
Everyone does at some point.
That's not a problem. I mean, I know that Delilah, one of our protocols, she asked as well in the question box, she was like, still feeling like some of the sweet stuff, even though I'm not getting the sugar cravings and I know it's not the best for me. But I'm just like, well, that's also not a problem. It means you're still going to, like, if you like sweet food, you're still going to want to have sweet food some of the time, potentially.
It's just not controlling your life anymore.
Exactly. And I think that's the major difference. And that's when I ask people when they say, I'm still getting sugar cravings. And I'm like, okay, let's dive into that a bit more. This is often happens on our weekly video calls in the protocol, where someone's like, my sugar cravings have improved heaps, but I'm still getting some. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. And they're like, well, after dinner, when we're watching TV, like, I still, I'm not like, I wouldn't, if we didn't have anything in the house, I wouldn't go out and get some. But, if I've got chocolate in the house, I probably will want a piece. And I'm like, that's okay. So that's not really a craving. That's feeling like a sweet thing, which is a very normal occurrence and normal reaction, right?
Especially if it's habitual, like after dinner.
Yeah, especially if it's habitual. So I would say to that's not necessarily a craving. Whereas if you're like being really physically driven to go and get that, then that's something that we need to work on. But other than that, then,
that's fine.
It's fine, totally. Having a piece of dark chocolate after dinner every single night like I do, totally fine. Not a problem with that. So I think that's also is just knowing when something is actually like that, you even though you're sugar cravings might have improved drastically, you may still feel like you want to eat something sweet, and that's totally okay. And we can build that into your week. You can build it in, as I said, with just going, right, well, I know that I really, like, I couldn't give two hoots about like fried chips, like hot potato chips. Like, that's not something that I care about at all. But give me a sticky date pudding and I am there, right? So you might build that in and go, right, well, I'm going out for dinner. I'm going to have a meal that I really enjoy, which might be a like steak and some salad or something like that, and some but I'm going to have that dessert.
Yeah,
great. Whereas someone else will go, actually, and I deal with this a lot, where people say, you talk a lot about sugar on the podcast, but I don't ever want sugar or feel like sugar. And that's also completely normal. You can still have high blood sugar and insulin and not feel like sugar. But you go, well, actually, I couldn't care two hoots about a Snickers bar or a bag of sweets, but give me...
a bag of chips.
Yes.
That's me.
Yeah, totally.
I'm definitely a salty, savoury person, for
so
sure.
The same thing could go replace when I say, sugar cravings. If you're being driven to find simple carbohydrates like a bag of crisps or something similar, then again, that we want to try and fix that so that you're not having to drag yourself away from it. So I'd say to Erin, work with someone that can help you get on what I call the sugar roller coaster or the sugar coaster. Stop getting onto that ride first, and then we don't have to try and drag you off it.
Yeah, because otherwise you're fighting your physiology, and your physiology will always win, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So Heidi wanted to talk a little bit more about consistency and being like disciplined. Struggling to like stick to those changes for more than just a couple of days. So it's like, cool, Monday, Tuesday, killing it, and then it gets to Wednesday, Thursday, and it all starts to go downhill. And then by the weekend you're like, oh well, I've just blown it, I might as well give up now. Yeah,
totally. So I think it goes back to figuring out what is the roadblock here. So is it that you have enough food in the house and you've made something on Sunday night dinner that's done you for Monday, Tuesday, but by the time it gets to Wednesday, you get home late, and then you're like, oh, there's no food out, like I don't know what I'm going to have, so I just end up eating or ordering takeaways. Right? If that's the case, then it's like, okay, so that's a time management issue. So let's fix the time management. It's not that, oh my God, I'm like, I literally can't drag myself away from the hot chips. It's like I wouldn't have actually felt like them had I gone home and known that I had something in the pantry that I could eat relatively quickly. So I would say fix the problem if it's time management. Whereas if it's that, and that I would say is the most likely scenario, the case I see most often is just that it's getting used to into the habit and the routine of planning and building this into your day. If it's that I eat well for 2 days and then I just really crave something else, then great, we'll build in one of your treat meals midweek. So you say, great, we're going out for dinner on a Wednesday night, and that's great because you then
than saving it all for the weekend.
Yeah, or maybe it's Thursday, right? And then you have it on Wednesday and then you eat at home again on Thursday, or you don't have to eat home, but you choose you eat out, but you choose a meal that is right for you. And then just so that you're then not feeling deprived and feel like I have to make it all the way through the week and then I get to have whatever I want on the weekend. So that could be another way as well, Heidi.
I think that kind of takes away that big blowout mentality, the big cheat meal at the end of the week mentality, for sure. And I think another one that feeds in really nicely to that is from Stephanie, and she said, how do you deal with the convenience of takeaway food and like the time it takes to make better choices? Because I guess it's really hard. One, if you're trying to fight that physiology of like, I'm craving this so badly. And then two, it's like, well, this healthy thing takes so long to make and I just want to go get like a butter chicken and some chips.
And a naan.
A
garlic naan.
You get carried away, so.
You really do.
Yeah.
And the poppadoms. And the everything. Oh my God.
Yum, I'm getting hungry.
Okay, we're getting carried away. But, so I'd say one thing that I found really helpful, and I'm sure that a lot of people will have different techniques here, and Sophia can chime in with your techniques as well, but one of my techniques is having like some things that I know that I have at home that I really enjoy that are really quick to prepare. Because what I've figured out is that it actually takes me longer to search through Uber Eats and figure out what I want and then like order it and then wait for the order to come than what it would to actually just make that make whatever I know I like at home the same. So for me, what I know that I love is like a Thai prawn stir fry thing with kind of like a oyster soy based sauce, and maybe it's got like some cashew nuts and some vegetables, and I know that it's something that it's really easy for me. So I always have some cooked rice at home in the freezer. So cooked rice freezes really well. It's a trick for young players. So I always have that there, so I'm not waiting 15 minutes for the rice to cook. Another great tip though is that rice cooks perfectly every time in the microwave. Just put in double the amount of water that you want that you have as rice. So if you put half a cup of raw rice in there, then put in a cup of water, cover it, and then put it in the microwave for sort of 5 minutes at a time. Keep stirring it, and it's always perfect. It's obviously never burns, always nice and fluffy, and you don't have to worry about it sticking to the bottom of the pot. So you can jam it in there and then make the rest of your meal, and then it's done at the end of it. So, but I also just have a bunch frozen, and then I always have a bag of frozen shrimp or frozen prawns, we call them. And I know that I can make up, like I'll always have some vegetables in the fridge, and it doesn't matter how rubbery and old they are. I can always just chop them up and chuck them into a pan and quickly stir fry them with a bit of, literally like a bit of oyster sauce maybe. And I just have a sauce that is like my go-to, right? And sometimes it can take, a bit of a trial and error to find what you like. Mine's literally, I pour some soy sauce into a jar. I put about half a teaspoon of monk fruit in there, maybe some sesame oil, maybe some garlic and ginger, and that's it. Done. Easy. And so I know that meal, which I find really satisfying, as good as a Thai takeaway, which would probably be one of my main takeaways, I find that as good, and it is far quicker than ordering and waiting for that to arrive, or even ordering it and going and picking it up on the way home. So the other things I have like these, it's like a black bean dal, and
this is that Dishroom one.
So it's
Inspo?
like it's actually a company called MTR, and I know you can get it in a lot of countries around the world, but my friends got me onto it when we were hiking. They'd taken it as their hiking meal. It's little pouches.
I know the ones you're talking about.
Yeah,
They're
little pouches of like, there's like dal and chana masala, so like a chickpea one, or I really like the black bean dal one. And they are really like, so they're shelf stable, they keep in your pantry, and there's a palak paneer one as well, which is good for people that aren't dairy sensitive. And so I know that I can have that in my pantry, and that it is really good. All I need to do is maybe bang it in with some like steamed frozen vegetables. So those like frozen vegetables that you can get and just steam them, and that I really enjoy. It's as good to me as a curry that I would get from a store, from an Indian takeaway place, and it is super quick. I just put it in the microwave and it's in the pot and it's done. And interestingly, I shared this on Instagram. Remember this?
I do remember that.
So
it
Sophia
was controversial, guys.
Yeah, Sophia and I were like furious about this. So I shared it on Instagram and just said, I get these and I keep them in the pantry, and we use them for hiking, and they're really good as well. And this one woman commented back, and she was like, "How dare you be promoting? I thought you were a healthy person, and you're promoting good health, and you're promoting these foods that," and I'm like,
paraphrasing.
By promoting, I am definitely not paid by them. I am merely sharing what I am eating. It was like, how dare you provide these or promote these foods that are full of, what was she worried about? The oils.
Inflammatory oils.
Yeah, right, because they had some like canola oil or something in it.
Which like obviously we wouldn't want all the time, but if you're like the day that Claire had this curry on, she had like 5 meetings and had a whole bunch of stuff to do in between those, so she barely had time to even sit down and eat. it's fine. It's fine to have that once in a while.
Totally. And that's the thing. It's like when it comes to the choices, and sometimes it's just making the better choice, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the perfect choice, but it's what you have there.
Yeah.
And this is what I try to share on Instagram stories quite a bit of the time, is that like I don't do perfect. I don't expect you guys to be perfect. Sometimes my better choice is, you know, when I'm out at meetings and I have forgotten to take some lunch, or I can't find anything at a deli or something that's going to work for me. It might be a can of tuna and a piece of fruit. And yeah, not a vegetable in sight, but actually that's fine. And it gets me through and I feel pretty good. I'm not getting a blood sugar crash from it. And that not every meal has to be some gourmet, like delicatessen type.
Definitely. And like dinner wise, I have two go-tos if I cannot be bothered. One is a little bit longer term, but it's low effort, is slow cooker meals are amazing. Spices, frozen veggies if you don't have any fresh, a bit of stock and a protein, chuck that in, go to work, come back, it's done with rice. And then salmon sheet pan situation, that's always great because you can just pull the salmon out of the freezer, chuck any vegetables that you have on the pan as well, drizzle it, put it in the oven for 15 minutes, chill out.
Yeah.
Come back, done.
Totally. I think that's
Easy.
brilliant. One of the other good hacks I found as well for quick meals is getting an air fryer.
Oh, life-changing.
Absolutely life-changing. Like this week I had forgotten to take the chicken out of the freezer because I was going to do a roast chicken. And I had all of our protocol calls on Monday, and then I was trying to fit in a gym session in between, and I finally remembered about 2 p.m. to take the chicken out. And it's middle of winter here, right? And we've had this polar blast here this week. So it's been so cold. So I would got the chicken out to defrost and thought, maybe 3 hours or a couple of hours would be fine. Put it by the heater. Nothing. So I was in Googling. I was like, can you air fry a whole chicken from frozen?
You might have seen this on our stories, by the way.
Turns out you can. So it's finding those sort of hacks and then being like, great, because as you said, often the problem is when you haven't forgotten to take something out of the freezer, or you don't, having some things you can have from frozen, like the salmon you just mentioned, is such a great hack, because you just get home, you know that you can always have that in the freezer, and as you said, put it on a sheet pan, put a bit of spice and oil on it, some veggies, and it's done. And I think the main thing is it's got to be something that you like. Like for me, the prawn Thai kind of dish works really well. The naan works really well because it's as good to me as tasting as what like a takeaway would be. So I don't feel like I'm
being deprived.
Yeah, totally. So you might have different things. So what would you, if you would think about what you would reach out for in a takeaway, and think about how you could have similar on hand that's easy for you to, as we said, maybe cook from frozen, or have ready-made that you can grab that's a better alternative than what you were going to get. It might not be perfect. Like me, you might get slammed by some random on the internet for eating inflammatory oils, but you know what?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
We're circling back a little bit to the whole cheat term. Cheryl wants to know, how do you get back on track after a planned cheat?
Yeah.
So
again, swap the word cheat out for treat. And I think that can help, because it means that you don't, it's not like, I've blown it because I've cheated. It's like, no, well, this is a treat and it is planned and it is part of my week, so I can have this without feeling guilty. Going back to what we said about not feeling guilty. I think what I mentioned before about starting off by having them in the evening can be a really good thing, because then it doesn't become just a whole day of treat. It is confined to that one meal. Yeah. Now, I'd say that your ability to flex this muscle, which is what you said in the last podcast, that I think really worked well, was that realizing that changing your diet and stuff is like, learning a new sport, and you're going to have to learn new muscles and learn new skills. And so this is think about, eating more flexibly is like learning a new skill. And so you've got to learn to flex that muscle a bit more. So by starting with easy things, like starting by having your treats as your dinner meal, can then mean that you don't have to worry about getting back on track, because you have a sleep, you reset, and most people feel pretty good when they start the next day. And having a plan for the week, if for you that might help by having planned in, say for example, your treat meal you had was planned for Saturday night because you were going out, and then Sunday you already had planned what you were going to have for breakfast that next day, and you know that's a really good meal for you, you feel good, you operate well, and then you're more likely to make good decisions lunch and the next day as well. So start with that, and then when you get better at doing this, you can then start with other meals in your day.
And I think another good tip to include that's great for easing you into that is having a think about how you can modify foods that you really like in order to make them kind of suit the changes that you've done, if that makes sense. So kind of similar to how you would recreate your favorite takeaway, because then you don't feel like you're missing out. It's just like making it slightly different so that it suits your body a little bit better than the original would. Yeah,
absolutely. I also think that one really good tip that I would use is when you do have a treat meal that even if you've planned, if you then find it really hard to then choose the next meal, is to maybe like just scribble down on a piece of paper or maybe write it in your phone notes. What is it about that makes it so hard for you? There's some underlying thoughts about that have been ingrained into you from previous dieting habits that it has to be all or nothing. And this is mostly the case for many of us. We've been on one diet or another where it's been everything. You cannot have anything that's off the plan or you have failed, right? And so there's this learned behavior that it must be all or nothing. And so I think if you realize where it's coming from, why you're having these feelings of guilt or shame around that food, and you're more likely to make a bad choice the next meal, is then when you realize where it's coming from, you're like, that's so funny, because I didn't realize that I still harbored that view. And if I can now realize that I don't actually believe that anymore, then it can be much easier to not feel completely like that I've fallen off the bandwagon.
Yeah. Lou wants to know how you pick back up after failure and breaking the changes you've made. So not necessarily something planned, but maybe, you've had a really busy work week and you're mentally and physically exhausted, and you've gone off plan in quotation marks, and then you're just like, I can't, how do I even get back to getting back into that routine?
Yeah. This is really, again, really common. I'm sure we've all been through there as well, where we just feel like we're so far that it's hard to get back into those routines. What I would say is, Lou, just focus on the next meal, right? Just focus on the very next meal. Like, it's not the worst thing I think people can do is go, right, well, I'll then start again. Okay, well, I've blown this week, I'll start again on Monday. No, don't get into that mentality, because there will always be a next Monday. Just go, okay, well, I know that to feel better, what do I have? So say the next meal is dinner, right? Okay, what can I make that's going to make me feel good? And it often is, all it is making one good choice, like a meal that can just get you right back on there.
Yeah.
Because then the feelings of failure go away, the feelings of guilt and shame, because you have made a great choice and you're physiologically feeling better as well.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people fall into that if they have something like that happen and then they blow out or binge, then they're like, oh my god, I've been so awful, like I'm just gonna like not eat for a little bit, or like take a break from like eating and restrict a little bit to compensate for it. But that doesn't really help, because you end up just going round and round of binging and restricting, and that's even harder to get out of. Yeah,
and I think we're talking a lot here about eating, but the same could apply for, as I said in the last podcast, it could apply for when you haven't been exercising for a while, and it's
definitely.
How do I get back into exercise? And again, it can just focus on, right, what can I do today to get a bit more activity in? So maybe I don't have time to go into a full hour workout at the gym, and I'd say that's probably not a good idea because you're just going to end up feeling sore, and that's then going to stop you from exercising for the rest of the week. So make it easy. Go, well, could I just park my car 15 minutes more walk away from work, and just then I walk 15 minutes to work and then 15 minutes home from work. Okay, cool, great. Or what could I do? Could I do 5 minutes? And this is what I give our protocolers that are really struggling with exercise, is I say to them, use the 5-minute rule. Like you have to say to yourself, right, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes of, maybe it's squats or lunges or press-ups or a combination of those. And the reason I like the 5-minute rule is because you can never say I don't have time. There's no excuse when it's 5 minutes. Everybody has 5 minutes. Like, I don't care how busy you think you are, you have 5 minutes. So when you say, right, well, have I got 5 minutes? The answer has to be yes. And then when you do that, you also only set the expectation it only has to be 5 minutes. And then you can finish, right? It doesn't have to be any more. But if you're enjoying it, you might choose to, well, could I spare 5 minutes more? Actually, yeah, I could. Okay, do 5 minutes more. Then it's like, great, that was 10 minutes of, strength activity. That was brilliant. And, put on some good music, try and enjoy it, like do something, but don't...
Make it fun.
Yeah, make it fun, but also don't make it this massive barrier, because you can do 5 minutes of exercise in your pajamas. You can do 5 minutes of exercise in your work dress. Like I can stand here now in my work boots and dress and do 5 minutes of squats and lunges, like in this room that we're in. Like anyone can do it. You don't have to have this big... Sometimes it's about overcoming that, what you think is a massive mountain, but it's actually a molehill. You just have to do it, and then you get back into it and go, actually, that feels pretty good. It feels good to move my body.
It's like a little exercise snack.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that we often say in the protocol is the best type of exercise is the one you'll actually do. And if that's just 10 minutes of doing some squats while you wait for that curry to boil up and cook, that's fine. That's better than nothing. And you shouldn't have to beat yourself up because you didn't do this massive 1 hour weight session.
Absolutely.
1 hour weight sessions are great too, but it's not like something, not everyone's got the time for that all the time, and that's fine. Everyone's got their own stuff going on, and that's okay. And the final one, just to kind of wrap that up, is from Louise, and she wants to know, how do you cope when the stress kicks in, because everything just goes out the window?
Again, I think it comes back to planning, right? Like you have to, when you see that coming, and sometimes we know when we're going to have stressful weeks because we just look at our calendar and go, oh my god, like today I've been in back-to-back meetings, right? We had podcast this morning, and then I had another meeting, and then we had another hour of podcasting, and then I was straight into a interview for the Cultivate Fertility workshop that I'm part of with lots of other health practitioners around the world, which is brilliant. I'll be sharing about that on my Instagram. And then
now we're back.
And now we're back, and so it's just been it's what's the time now?
We are almost at 2:00 in the afternoon.
2:00. I haven't had lunch yet, right? But that's fine, because I know that I can manage this. I'm still feeling pretty good from my good breakfast that I had this morning, because I knew that if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't get a break until after we did this. And so it's we have to be able to adapt and modify based on what we've got going on in our life. And I think lots of us are really busy. The best thing you can do is plan ahead. If you know that you're going to have a busy day, like I did this morning, have a really good breakfast so I know that I'm not going to crash in the middle of and just want to reach out for sugar. And I know that as soon as we finish this episode, I've got lunch in the fridge. So I'm not then having to go out and find something at 2:30 when most places are sold out of lunch food by now. So I've got that to go to. If it is that it's when, I don't know, not necessarily busy stress, or maybe it is busy stress, but when it's been landed on you. So you might be at work and you've got a report that you're doing that's due tomorrow, and suddenly your boss has come to you and landed you with another report that's also due tomorrow, and you're like, how on earth am I going to finish both of these and also pick up the kids or also cook myself dinner tonight or what have you. And that's where having, I think, when you're in that stressful situation, you feel yourself feeling overwhelmed, and then wanting to comfort yourself with sugary or high carbohydrate, satisfying foods. That's another real learned behavior that we have. Our brains know that we want to feel good, right? They're like, oh, something's wrong here. She's not feeling good. She's stressed. How can I make her feel better? Oh, I know. This food, crisps or sugar. Or one of my patients at the moment, hers is like, she's like, I'm not really a big sugar person, but she's like, give me a like sugary Starbucks drink and I'm there. Like frappuccino type thing. So you know what the thing is for you. Yeah. So I'd say something that generally helps is just going for a bit of a walk and taking some deep breaths, and often that can just reset the situation. And then having some easy go-tos, like if you know you're going to be working late, then if it is a takeaway, then what are the kind of takeaways that work well for you? So it is, stress is, I think the main things is go for a quick walk, take some deep breaths, reset yourself. You're more likely to make better changes when you do that. And the second thing is planning and preparation. Yeah.
And I think if it's the kind of stress that comes out of nowhere, something like quite big, like a family crisis or something, give yourself the grace to not be perfect all the time, because that's a pretty big deal, and you shouldn't feel bad for having to take a step back for that. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it's a really good point. No, when there's like things that you are absolutely not control over that have sideswiped you, it's just go, actually, like, what I eat at the moment is the least of my concerns. I just need to survive and get through this, and so wouldn't be worrying about it in that instance.
Yeah.
So that's all for today. Remember that if you want personal help with your PCOS, then the best place for that is our PCOS protocol program. This is not some generic PDF that you get sent. This is the first week we identify what's driving your PCOS, and then you get given the most important changes for you. So, and I'm there with you the whole way, answering questions, being there with you weekly on the video calls, further personalising this for you and identifying if there's anything else that might be going on for you. I mean, every week we talk with different women about different symptoms, and that might lead them to get an endometriosis diagnosis or find out that they've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that often there's connecting issues that when we actually look at them holistically, we figure out what's actually happening for them. So if you want more information about that, then there is a link in the show notes, or you can head to thepcosnutritionist.com/the PCOS protocol, or just hit program from the main menu. And if you've got any questions, then please don't hesitate to email us. We're hello@thepcosnutritionist.com. Bye for now.